do.
That's brilliant. Hey everybody, welcome back to Andertons TV. Finally, I've managed to get Lee Malia to come on the show from Bring Me the Horizon. You didn't need me to tell you that. You already knew that. Man, thank you so much. Honestly,
Cheers,
I think whether it's been through Gibson, Epiphone, Marshall, or whomever, we've tried to get you on. But fortunately now, you're working with a new guitar company, or a new company anyway for you.
Yeah.
And the lovely people at Jackson have arranged today, so thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Well, look, everyone's going to be probably familiar with the band. Me being old, still thought it was a relatively new band. And then I'm on Wikipedia going like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's coming up for 25 odd years or something, isn't it, since the band
I think
formed?
it's like 21 years this year, something like that. So yeah.
Which is mad. You don't look
Yeah.
any different from all the press shots that I saw from...
I don't know about that. Yeah. Just different fringe or something.
Maybe. But look,
yeah.
we're going to talk about the guitar, and we're going to talk about the rig you're using now and the journey you've been on with other gear, I expect. We'll talk a bit about what the band's got coming up this year. But always with this, I love to get under the skin of who the guitar players you grew up listening to and who really influenced you and all that kind of stuff. So take us back. When did you get your first guitar?
I got it around, I think I was 14, so maybe a bit later in life, but I was like not interested in music. And then I was talking to someone about it yesterday, and then, do you know, from playing like Tony Hawk's and games like that, I started hearing like just the soundtracks to them, and it just like kind of started getting me interested in music, rock music and stuff. And and then I would just like, next thing I'm like, oh, I want to be a guitarist, because I saw like, do you know, like Green Day and stuff like that. And then asked my dad. Well, he'd always put a guitar in my room, and we're like, oh, if you want to play it, just like pick it up. And I'd asked him maybe about a month before I decided I wanted to be a guitarist that I didn't want it in my room anymore because I thought it was going to get broke.
Right.
And then he'd give it like my cousin or my uncle or something, and then next minute I'm like, oh, I want a guitar. And he went, I'll just give that one away that's been in your room for like 2 years. So I bought like do you know Falcon? Strat copy.
Oh, yes, that was like one of those kind of just
It was like 80,
mass-produced.
£80,
Yeah.
But got one of them, and then just got like mad obsessed with guitar, and because of that, at that time, like the internet were there, but it weren't like everything. So I had so much.
Still dial up.
Yeah, after 6, I were allowed on, and then, but so I'd spend all day like just playing guitar, and then got addicted, and then I heard Metallica. And then they were the first band that I was like obsessed fully with, and just went for it. Started buying, you know, like the album tab books that were probably wrong, and learning like albums through and stuff like that. Yeah, so they're like my first big addiction.
So you're talking, I guess, I suppose 90s. I can't think of many bands that would have influenced more people than Metallica.
Yeah.
But yeah. I can see, well, I'm guessing from your playing style, Hetfield was a much bigger influence on you than maybe Kirk Hammett.
Yeah. Yeah, so like definitely because I didn't even know about alternate picking and stuff at that point, so I just learned everything down picking, because I learned all Metallica riffs, watching like videos of them and stuff on like MTV2 or whatever. And it were only about like 3 years into playing guitar or something that I had a lesson, and they were like, why are you only picking down? It's like so much harder. And I didn't even realise, you know what I mean? And I started learning like scales and all that sort of stuff, which helped. But I still think though, like, learning Metallica is actually really handy because they cover quite a lot of styles. Do you know, in their old albums especially, like Justice for All and Ride the Lightning and stuff, there's so much like cool like clean chord stuff, and then a lot of heavy picking and obviously solos and stuff. So I feel like it's a good first band to learn a lot of stuff off. Yeah.
It's a great first band. I mean, I still think as well the down picking only has a very different tonality.
Yeah.
I think because I find it very difficult to just play I don't have the speed in my sort of right wrist to do everything down pick, so I don't play it like that.
Yeah.
And then I never get it to sound as percussive maybe as the guys that do it all down picking. So is that something that even on the sort of the Horizon kind of stuff that you're still conscious that you're trying to sort of down pick the heavier stuff?
Yeah, definitely. It's like, it definitely makes a difference for like the sharpness of stuff.
Yeah.
And, but then I also love that if you do up pick the like string open, it gets more of like a twang.
Right.
To if you down pick like that, to like it gets like a that kind of like spank sound.
Yeah.
So like it definitely makes a mad difference. And then if you're wanting something to be heavier, if you do downpick it, it does sound sharper and more attacky. And it's a lot of it as well is like the release of the like the palm mute. Do you know what I mean? So like if you're doing like, it's like, do you know, releasing the, they're doing the opens and then putting your hand back down. It's like a lot of learning that stuff, when to palm mute and when to.
I'm not sure. Go. I mean, Danish Pete, who's not here today, and I, you know, we're always criticised for not getting our metal kind of chops right, and actually, my brain is sort of going, oh, it's complicated left-hand stuff, and it really isn't, is it?
No, it's a lot of it's right hand.
And I just think if you get the right hand wrong, you can never do metal properly.
No, I think it is a lot. Yeah, like a lot of bands like James Hetfield's known for his right hand, and then like even like a lot of like hardcore bands they play so hard and stuff. It gives a certain sound, you know what I mean? And yeah, I think a lot of it is down to that. Obviously, that hand helps if you know know what you're playing. But like, yeah, it's all the muting that makes metal sound like tight and like rhythmic and stuff like that.
So where did it go? So you started at 14. You got your first lesson. You said it's 3 years later. Yeah. So did you go through like any kind of a music college kind of education, or was it all learned from being in bands? Or
so when I left school, I didn't have like a clue what I was going to do because I weren't particularly good at anything. I just like played guitar and were obsessed with it. So my dad, I was going to go to college to be a plumber, and then last minute my dad was like, "Oh, why don't you try going to like music college?"
It's a great career being a plumber. Trust me, I'm doing a house renovation at the moment. I've paid my plumber an absolute fortune.
It's mental. That was the idea. But so I went to music college for like, I think it's 2 years, like a BTEC in popular music or whatever. But that were more so like, you just like jammed with people and learned stuff, a bit of like stuff on how to program MIDI and the history of jazz and stuff like that. And but then the tutor were really cool there. Because our band was like starting to take off as I was at college, he'd grade me on my band's live performances rather than doing it at college and stuff, because he was like, you're kind of doing what you're here to do. Like that's, you want to be, the college is to try and get into the music industry, and our band were kind of taking off. So it were really cool, and like he'd let me, if I had to go to a gig, he'd understand why I weren't in college and stuff like that. So yeah, I got lucky.
What's the crossover there? So Bring Me the Horizon was your first band?
No, so I'd had like school bands and stuff.
But the band you're talking about taking off is
Bring Me the Horizon.
Right,
yeah,
okay,
so
fine.
16 when we started. So I met the drummer in college in the first year. He was doing like art.
Right.
And he just knew like friends of friends and stuff, and just got chatting to him. Went to watch his band play because he was in like I don't even know how you describe it. They used to be called a certain name, but I can't say it. Like
we can beep it if you want.
I don't know what else you describe it as. Like at the drive-in, influenced but crazier. And I went to see his band play, and then he came and saw. So my like school band carried on into college, but all we were doing were covering Metallica in like local pubs, and he came to watch. And then we got on, and he was just like, "Oh, we should start a band." Like me, him, and then Curtis, who used to play with us. I went to school with him, and he was in my like Metallica tribute band and stuff. So we were just like, "Yeah, we'll have like a jam or whatever," and it was that easy. You just like rented a practice room, and then he was like, "Oh, I know a kid who sings, well, screams," and that were like Ollie, and we're just like, "Yeah, we're in a band then now."
Oh, man. There's so much stuff in the news over the last year or so about how that just doesn't happen anymore, and venues closing down and all that kind of stuff. But that's the like the dream. I mean, it's obviously the bands I were in never took off, and I ended up, following into the music shop. But I just think I wouldn't change any of that for the world. No. That camaraderie and it's just magic.
It would. Someone asked me yesterday, like, would you have any advice to someone starting a band now? And I was like, no, because we started a band 20 years ago, and it's so different now. Like, I wouldn't have a clue now, because back then you could play a gig, like we could make a tour, and you could find like every city would have like a rock venue that just had a gig on every week, and they didn't really care who you were, because they just let you play. So we just used to go find places we could play and drive to them. There'd be like 4 people there, but you know, like we did it like properly, just driving around in cars, find venue. This is before Google Maps as well, so you had to print off like, I can't remember what website it was, like you used to print directions off and turn up to like Coventry on a Tuesday and play to no one. But it was fun, do you know what I mean? Because we were like 17, travelling about around England just.
And that's it, right? And if you had a transit van, we used to sleep in the back of the transit van or whatever. It just, I don't know what it is now, whether parents are too overprotective or the venues don't exist, or people are just like, how many followers have you got on Instagram? It's like, well, I don't know, none at the moment. I can't book you. I don't
even think people go out like they used to though. Cause
maybe that's what it is.
There was like a local venue in Rotherham called like the Welly, and they just every Thursday there was a gig on. You didn't even know we were playing, but a bunch of kids would just go every week, and you had like a membership. So you went down, and whoever played, you were just there because you liked watching bands. Do you know what I mean? And I don't even know if that exists anymore, where there's a venue that just does gigs every week with local bands and stuff like that. So
we've got to protect what is left of that somehow, because it's just the opportunity to do what you did with your mates and the success you've had off the back of it. It's just like, it's so important. But so I think, because a lot of, you hear a lot of artists who perhaps are in several bands or have a few years of finding their feet before they get successful. Yeah. But you presumably then, how old were you when the band was kind of signed and all of a sudden you were thinking, okay, this is blowing up a bit? I
would have been 17. So the first time we got signed though was, so we used to play with this band called The Nothing, and they were like just like a hardcore band from Leeds, and their singer loved our band, so he was just like, you need to put a CD out, and we were like, we ain't got any money, so we can't record. So we just played with not even having a CD, and then he was like, oh, I'm going to take a loan out and pay for you to record. So he took like, I think like a grand loan out, sent us somewhere in Nottingham for a weekend. We made like an EP, and then he was like, oh, I'm going to start a label just to release this. And then I guess it was just like done in his bedroom, do you know what I mean? And he just released it, and that turned into 30 Days of Night Records, and they had a bunch of like UK hardcore bands after us and stuff. But yeah, that's just because some guy was like, I'll pay for it for you then, and then he made his money back, I guess, from CD sales. And so I guess that's like an independent signing. But then from him, we got signed to Visible Noise, which was like, they had like Bullet for My Valentine and another band on them, but you can't really mention them anymore.
I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah. So they were like a big deal to us, do you know what I mean? And she bought the rights off him, and then we were on Visible Noise. So that I would have been like 18, because I think we were on 30 Days a Night for like a year or so. But yeah, and then we started getting on proper tours and stuff because she had like more knowledge.
What gear did you go and buy with your first advance then?
We didn't get one.
You didn't get an advance?
No, we didn't get an advance, no.
So what were you, I mean, so how were you funding the gear then? You must have had to go out and buy some fairly serious stuff.
No, it's just stuff, for the first few years, it's stuff like my dad had bought me. So for the first few years, we toured with, the Marshall MG Head mini cab thing. So we used that, because that's all we had. So we just used to take that about. I mean, we only had cars as well to put stuff in, so everything a bit lighter was fine back then.
What was the guitar at this time?
At that time, I was using like an Ibanez RG, like 570EX or something. It was just like
everything about this is just it's brilliant. Just the idea that you can achieve success with mates from college driving around with like basically a Marshall starter amplifier, and a relatively affordable Ibanez. Yeah. It's like it's just it's just, I think if it's in here and you've got the drive, you can, and you've obviously got a bit of talent.
Yeah,
I think you can.
I don't even know if we were talented. I just think we had. It was just like, it was at the front, like, because we were all into a load of like American bands and American influence, and I don't think it had quite hit the UK yet. With like MySpace and all this stuff. So we were like at the start of when everyone was like getting into that kind of music. So, and we were like the UK band. I guess it's just like, I can't go and see them because they're in America, so we'll just go and see these instead.
So I mean, you're talking what the sort of back end of that sort of new metal type
Well,
vibe?
I guess.
Or what are you?
No, like metalcore.
Yeah,
and,
after that maybe. Who were the American bands then that you were sort
like,
of being compared to?
Norma Jean, Every Time I Die, Poison the Well, like all these super cool bands, to be fair, that like we were just trying to do what they were doing, but like in our own, like not really a Clue version. And yeah.
So really how did then, what you know, tell me about that day when your first JCM 800 or Les Paul or what, you know, whatever it, what were those moments where you just thought, wow?
I think the first is when we first ever got endorsed by Ibanez, and like I said, I was playing it.
I don't remember. Okay.
This
isn't like an artist model.
No, it would just, they just give us some stuff to use, and because I'd managed to buy a few years in, I bought a 5150, you know, the old block letter one, off my friend's brother, who was like, I used to be in a band. He used to scream in a band when I was in school, and he was like, "Oh, my brother's selling his amp." So I bought that for like £200 or something. So then I had like a real head. So I felt like it was a proper cool, because I'd seen all these bands using it as well.
Yeah.
But I was still running it through that MG cab, you know, like tiny one. So I'd got like a good head, and then I can't even think how, but like someone from, it was like a rep for Ibanez, were just like, "Oh, are you interested in like an endorsement? We'll send you a couple of guitars each." So me and like the other guitarist was like, "Yeah, of course," because I don't know, we didn't have any money, do you know what I mean? And stuff like that were crazy to get given like a guitar, and so that was the first thing of like, this is weird why you're just giving me something and like for nothing, do you know what I mean? And then we got like I think it was PV endorsement, so then we got like the cabs and stuff to take on tour. So it just kind of, as the band grew, obviously like companies get interested, I guess, to get seen, like stuff seen on stage, and it was done that way, so it just grew like that.
I mean, I know obviously today is about the Jackson thing, but I'm interested, that first signature guitar that you brought out with Epiphone, I think displayed a sense that you really wanted a sort of quite a specific style of guitar, as opposed to just like, you know, I don't know, a Les Paul with your signature on the back of it or something like that. Talk me through what it, you know, how is that happening? How are you sort of, is it what's the right word? You know, is it the way you play the music, trying to make and needing certain features on a guitar to enable that?
The style of the guitar though is like, I love, you know, like between 70s and 80s, like Les Pauls and stuff, when they were a bit weird, and like when they did like the Marauder and all that sort of stuff. So I bought like a bunch of them like weird Gibsons. So then when Epiphone were like, you could do, do you want to do like a signature? I was like proper looking in that era, and I found like, do you know the Artisan with the like 3 pickups? So I basically just like sent them a picture of that, and I'm like, I want to rip that off as close as we can with an Epiphone. And that's basically what it turned into. It was just like a modernised, I guess, version.
But the P90 and the humbucker thing, because that's not, especially at the time, I don't think that's a hugely common...
Nah.
So where did that come from?
First time I saw that is, do you remember Gary Moore did like a BFG? And that was that combination.
With the really like rippled kind of top on it, wasn't it? It's a great guitar.
But I used to go and watch Gary Moore with my dad, you know, like play at Monsters of Rock and stuff, and I saw, that was the first time I saw the P90 thing, and I'm like, I mean, it sounds good for Gary Moore, but then when I tried it, because my whole thing is I never really use the neck for any gain, it's always just clean. So the P90 for me is like the perfect mixture of all that, like single coil, but a bit bigger, not too like trebly, but it's not too bassy, so it don't get muddy and stuff. So it just works for me for clean.
Yeah.
And that's why I've always liked it. And then when it's in the middle and you like split the humbucker, I really like that sound. So I just had a chance to try one of them BFGs, I think, and I like played that, and I'm like, oh, it's a cool combination, and then just went from there. I
can imagine. I'm just trying to think. So the Epiphone that you had, was that a traditional Gibson scale length, like 24? So how were you sort of combating that sort of slightly looser string tension, perhaps not being ideal for the sort of music that you're playing? I was just using like that, like an 80. So like 80? Yeah. Like okay, 80. So just crazy heavy string, cut the nut different, and just like file the nut, and then and then just you used to have to drill out the
the tuning peg to fit it through, because I only found out about that because before that I was using, like, is it like Not Even Slinky or like heavy top, skinny bottom and stuff like that. And I were having that problem.
That doesn't even go down to like is that a 56 or something like that?
It's like it's nothing really. And I were having the problem, and then we went to America on tour, and Zach Wilde had a custom set of Ernie Balls, and I think he had like either a 60 something or a 70, which we were like, I didn't even know that existed. So I tried them, and then I was like, oh, I like this, but I'd love to go heavier. So then I just used to buy bass strings and put them on instead for the 80 with a Zach Wilde set. And I tried it in America, and straight away, like, so that was just before we wrote Suicide Season, and my style of like playing changed between them, the first album and that album, because of like the string, and all my riffs became like, I don't know, this certain sound from playing that string. So yeah, that it like changed my whole way of playing basically. It's cool.
Do you have to go as heavy as that on this guitar? Because I'm guessing this is a slightly longer scale length, right? Or have you?
It's not longer.
It's still okay. I don't know. Oh wow. So that's the same 25 and 3/4 inches. It's.
But I only use that for like drop A sharp and C, standard C.
So what is that is an 80 on that?
Yeah.
You can actually. But then you by the time you go to the A string, you've gone quite a lot thinner, haven't you?
What is the A?
It's a 25.5 scale length.
Aye.
Right, so that is the long. Yeah, I was going to say. So that's. By the way, this is Joey off screen here, who is Lee's tech, and we may well go back to talking to Joey a bit more about some of the stuff on the floor. So yeah, just really heavy E string, and then a slightly more conventional.
It's what? 44, yes.
So you've almost got a 7-string set on it, but you're just effectively your bottom B string is what you're using as your.
The rest of them took longer to figure out what I liked, if you know what I mean. Like I knew I liked that, but then we had and then I tried thicker ones there and stuff, and it was just a bit. I don't know, it just felt like train tracks. You know what I mean, like trying to play a guitar. So then to find like what worked, it took a while. But then I've played this setup for years now, innit? Like over 10 years. Like
that's great. So that was for quite a long time. You were basically just JCM 800 or 5150 or whatever, like a high gain valve head.
Well, the 800 I wasn't. So that was another thing just from touring. It was like, so the reason I found out about pedals and amps and stuff is because we'd play with another band, and I'd hear it and I'd be like, what is he using? Because it sounds insane. And we toured with Every Time I Die, and at that time, I was trying to like sound bigger, so I was running like a 5150 in a cab and then an orange in a cab because the orange had like more mids and stuff. And then we played with Every Time I Die on tour, and it was like the biggest sound I've ever heard, and they were just both running an 800 each into a 4x12 Marshall, and it was like huge, and it was that simple, do you know what I mean? And from then on I was like, I'm gonna have to try a Marshall, and then I did, and it just had so much like body and I don't know, movement to everything.
I've known a chap called Rabir Masad for a long time, and he really opened my eyes to, if you're playing very low tunings, it's significantly less gain on the amplifier than you might have if you were playing in a conventional tuning, because I think the string is so percussive. What did you learn? I mean, how were you learning about, were you setting your 5150s up with quite low gain anyway? Or?
Yeah, so when I was running that like dual rig, I had the 5150 on the like green rhythm channel, cranked like the gain on that, so it had more mids. It's like that channel had a bit more mids to it, but I was going away from that like scoop sound anyway, because like I said, I'd changed how we were playing, and it weren't as like, the first CD is a lot of like trying to be like Swedish death metal riffs, and you need more gain and a lot of chugging and stuff. So as soon as I started playing Marshall, then it had less gain, but it had more like aggression sound. It was like visceral, do you know what I mean? Because it's, when you get the mids right, it's so in your face, and like, I don't know, it changed. It's just aggressive rather than gainy. And just from doing that, I was like, oh, this is the sound. Stayed with it.
I mean, maybe with the timing is about right, because it does feel like if you go onto Apple Music and you just go, right, just bring me the Horizon on, but just let it play tracks in a random order, it does go from crazy heavy earlier stuff, and
Yeah.
even now still occasionally, but then there feels like there's a point at which there has been a shift in
Yeah.
the style, and perhaps try to what's the right word? I mean, some of the collaborations you've done or whatever like that, it does
Yeah.
bring you into the mainstream a bit more. Was that almost as a result of your playing style changing, or was there other stuff happening that was meaning the band kind of were just changing their sort of, I don't know, the sort of the vibe of the music they were
Yeah, I
trying to
think
make?
it was just like, I mean, the first album, we didn't really take it seriously because we were really young, and we didn't think it'd like be a career, do you know what I mean? So we were just like, this is fun, whatever. When we went into the studio, it would just, you'd only be in the studio if you were recording, everyone else would be like out drinking or whatever. So it was like, no one wanted to be in the actual studio. It was just like, no one cared. And then we went and did the second album, and yeah, we actually had like a proper producer who made us like actually like do guide tracks and work everything out and put effort in. And then I think we realised, because it was still, and we were still in a band, we were like, oh, maybe we do have to take this serious and actually put like maybe a bit more effort into stuff. And that's when his songwriting got a bit better. Then the CD after it got a bit better, and other influences came in. And I guess every album we tried to write better songs, rather than, the first album is just a string of riffs to a heavy bit at the end,
Right.
where you want everyone to mosh. Then the second album we started trying to write like, oh, this is like our version of a chorus. It's still screamy and it's not like your nice chorus sound, and then we just tried to progress on that. And I suppose as we got older and more experience, you get a little bit better at songwriting and all that stuff. And then it just kept developing with like new influences, like the electronic thing. Even on the second album, we did have electronics on that, but we didn't really know how to do it. So, and then the album after that, we got more stuff in. We got like, do you know the guy with Skrillex now?
Yeah.
He like did a bunch of like chopped vocals and electronics on that CD. And then after that, we actually got someone in the band to do electronics and stuff. So we were always trying to do it. It would just, if you listen through the albums, you can actually hear the progression, do you know what I mean? And then eventually we just got, I don't know, you kind of figure out like, oh, we actually need to write a structured song, but still keep it exciting and cool, and then just go from there. But then I also think it's hard not to just keep doing that. Like, do you know, like intro, verse, chorus, heavy bit, like it's hard to not just stick to that, because it's a formula that works, and I feel like that's when it gets boring.
Right.
Like, and so we still try, and like now we're like, we could just do a classic like Bring Me song, and it'd probably be quite big in that, but we're trying to do stuff that's like a bit out of the box now, because we don't want to get boring.
I think you've earned that right, to having been going for that long.
Yeah.
That you can do whatever you want to do, in the sense of, is there still a sense that when you've, I don't know, like do you write some sort of where there's just the drop or I don't know, something in there and you just go,
yeah,
that's the one. Is there a formula to that, in the sense of going, yeah, we've got to hit the audience with something at some point in the song, or I don't know I'm always intrigued about how artists make music, just what is that process?
I think it's a lot of that is vocals. Do you know when you know it's going to be catchy?
Right.
Because I think like there's only we spend a lot of time just on the music to make sure that's as like interesting as can be, but then you've got to leave space for like the vocal and stuff like that. So the vocals, they used to always come last, whereas now we're kind of like all you'll focus on trying to get a big chorus before we've even finished the song. Do you know what I mean? And if that chorus is really good, then you're like, well, we can make this work because we know they've got a chorus there and stuff like that. Really, so now more so we maybe focus on like the main part and then a chorus, and if that works, then you can build around that. Do you know what I mean? And you just got to figure out how to make it work. Yeah.
Are you a band that likes to get together and just riff around and see what happens, or is it typically someone comes and goes, right, here's the bones, guys, let's...
It's changed, because like first we were like a classic jam room, all stand and play and not know what's going on, and then eventually all like try and figure out a song. And and then it like progressed into. I mean, up until Sempiternal, we'd never demoed any songs. It was all like in his heads, so like, which seems mental now. So we'd just rehearse, write songs, and then everyone would just remember it for next week. But like, we'd never like recorded them to a phone or to like a Pro Tools or anything. And then eventually, when we got to Sempiternal, we were like, oh, this is so much easier because we started doing it on a computer, and you had the song there to re-listen to. Do you know what I mean? And remember. So I think like updating to that like way of working did help us with like knowing if a song is actually good or you just remember it being good and stuff like that. I forgot what you asked me.
That's fine. So
just like talking.
No, it's good.
Forgot what the actual question.
It's only just that. Yeah, is the writing process. Is it? But
so now it's like, I mean, the last album, I'd say like 90% of that was writ on tour. So you're just in random venues and someone will have a little setup and you hear like a snippet of something, then you're onto another song and it's like, it's just chaos.
Yeah.
There's no formula to it. And then you get off tour, Ollie lives in Brazil, as our bassist lives in like LA, so like it's all just done online and DI'd guitars sent backwards and it's pretty chaotic. You never really know what's going on because stuff's just everywhere. So, but it works for us. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I know you've recently started using QC.
Yeah.
And obviously, I promise you, Jackson, we are going to talk about the guitar. What was the setup that you had to try and replicate in the QC? So I'm assuming you've gone from a pedal board and guitar amplifiers, and now there's no pedal board, and sometimes there's amps and sometimes there isn't. And Joey, if you want to pitch in with anything, if need be, what were you trying to? What was your pedal board that you had to try and replicate?
To be fair, we're getting pretty ridiculous, wasn't it? So like it was all on a pedal board, and that was getting huge. So then we switched all the pedals into a rack, MIDI controlled, into like 2 Marshall heads and a Kemper, running through like a Marshall power like stage. Just because, I mean, band's been going a while now, so we've got so many songs that are different sounds and weird sound, like studio created sounds and stuff. So we're having to buy more and more pedals to try and like recreate everything. And then, I mean, me and Joey didn't want to switch to like digital for years, and everyone were like moaning at us basically that it were like, because everyone else had gone digital on the stage, and it were like a silent stage apart from me, and it were just, we didn't want to do it. And then eventually we tried the QC because we had to, because like this, where we were rehearsing, you weren't allowed to make any noise in the room I was in. We tried it and we captured my amp just dead quick, and then I was playing it and I'm like, you know what, you can barely tell, and that's when I was like, oh, maybe I ain't even got an excuse anymore, because it plays the same. Me and Joey were both listening to it and we're like, oh, I mean, if you tweak it a little bit, it sounds so close that it gets to that point where it only matters to me. Do you know, like a kid out front's not really going, they're not that bothered. They just want to see a show and it sound good. They're not like, oh, you better be using a Marshall. We're not like worried about it. So we switched over, and to be fair, it's just made life really easy, because I can sit at home with like this, listen to like the stems from as songs, recreate the sounds into that, and then upload it to a cloud to Joey, and then he just puts it in my rig. Do you know what I mean? It's like, we used to have to sit for hours and tweaking pedals and trying to recreate stuff while like everyone else is playing in the room, and do you know, it was just like,
were there many pedals that you had that you tried to profile in there, or were you able to use the sort of the out the box stuff mostly?
A lot of my overdrives and fuzzers are all ones I've captured.
Right.
And then there's like a bunch of heads in there that I've captured. And then we still use a couple of pedals.
For a long time, for about 2 years, we only used the QC for amp profiles.
Oh yeah,
right?
I forgot
so we still
about
had a rack full of pedals,
Right.
and it just went in the front end. The QC it's dead simple. It's just set up as a clean and a dirty, and it just recreated the box of amps that I had. So for years, we still used the same pedals, and then it was only until like we had some boutique fuzz pedals. One would break, and it'd be like, we'll put that in the QC. We used the spare, and then it just gradually went from there.
I noticed though, obviously, still got a Klon in the rig.
That's just proximity.
Just literally, just the fact that it's next to it.
Yeah, it's not actually, I'm not playing through that, but the circuitry.
Just not even switched on, but just the fact that it's close to the Cortex.
You have to have it on.
You have to have it on.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. We rehearsed this joke. It was much funnier before. So no, in all seriousness though, you are a fan of the original Klon.
Yeah.
As a what does that do to? Is it just like because you do run it super low gain?
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like I notice it sounds good, but then I've read online everywhere that everyone said if you don't actually use the gain, it doesn't make, you're not hearing the Klon. Do you know what I mean? But
I don't know who, somebody clever said that and everybody jumped on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
But it's something to do with where the gain level is set. If it's not above a certain level, it's not triggering one of the components in there. But to be honest with you, you take anything and change the volume level that comes out the other side of it.
Yeah,
it has to do something, right? But you're obviously using it more like a sort of a traditional high gain tube screamer type thing where it's all about necessarily level and EQ rather than gain.
So I used to use a tube screamer for years when I was like on PVs and stuff to add that like mid hump. Mm-hmm. But like with a Marshall, I don't like that added.
Right.
That added like nasally kind of like, you know, and you lose all the top end as well. Whereas like the Klon, I know everyone says it's like the transparency, but all it basically does is make it pushes your amp that bit better, but it keeps everything the same, but a little bit better. I don't know what it adds. Yeah. It's got like a mid attack, like a higher mid thing that I like. And as soon as I use one, I'm just like, all right, the amp just sounds a little bit better. I don't know why, but it's just, do you know what I mean? And it's worked for me for years. I got like a clone of a Klon, which with AB'd, and it was so close. I was like, I'll take this £200 clone on tour. Do you know what I mean? Because rather than buy a £3,000 Klon and
I know,
worry that someone's going to steal it.
You're subscribed to Andertons TV though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So when we hit 1 million subscribers, everybody, you know, he's in with a chance of winning the real one. So, have you done, since you've started using QC Live, have you done much with the band in the studio? And what's your happy place? You know, is it still very much layering up lots of amps and playing with mic positions, or are you just sort of going, I've got my sounds now in QC?
We haven't been to a studio for years.
You haven't been?
No, because I think you realise as well, it's just so expensive. Do you know what I mean? To rent like a top quality studio, you're paying ridiculous money, and it's got to the point now where a lot of stuff just gets re-DI'd and, you know, reamped and stuff. So a lot of it is like me into like a decent interface at home or on tour, and DIs with like a program on, and then Zach, who like the guy who produces the albums, he then spends the time in the studio making that sound good. But for years he was using my plugin. I had an STL Tones plugin with like my amps captured, so he was just using them. So it was the 800, but in this program, and he was just using them on the CDs and stuff. So yeah, it's the same stuff, but like digitalized.
So everything you've released in the last few years has been as a result of you being in different countries and just putting the parts together, and then a producer or somebody mixes it all together. And that's such a crazy new world way.
I know, yeah. It's the only way you can make it work though, when everyone lives all over, unless and with having like kids and stuff. You know, you used to have to go to like a studio for 2 months, and like not see people. It's like, as we've got a bit older and that, no one really wants to do that. Do you know what I mean? And it just works.
So what have you got at home? Have you got a little? Is it?
I've got like a little home studio, and it's just like a, what are they called now?
Universal.
Yeah, Universal Audio. Yeah. Just one of them into like a Mac, some decent monitors, and then just nice guitars.
That's incredible. So it's not, you know, you haven't got like a great big barn at the end of the garden.
No. It's like, I mean, it's a decent sized room, but like, it's just that simple now, because I don't know, it sounds good enough. Do you know what I mean? It sounds good. Like, I'm never like sat there going, oh, it's like, I could change it if it sounds bad as well. I can make that sound good, you know, to work with stuff. Yeah. And I also always found that like the way that you maybe used to your like 800 or whatever sounds good, and then you get in the studio, and to make it fit in a not in a CD, but in like in a mix, they have to change it so much anyway. Do you know what I mean? EQ and make space for everything else. So it gets changed a lot from what I like it sounding like anyway.
It's so weird you saying that, because I think I'd always known, you hear loads of stories going way back into the sort of 60s and 70s that, you know, the stems that end up on the record don't sound anything like how it would have sounded if they'd have been recording it, you know, sitting in the room with the amp. And Boss have made a little product now with like it's called like Assistant Mix or something like that. So it's an attenuator. So you get your valve amplifier, plug it into there, and then put the feed into your interface, and you get these great sounds. And then you go, right, the Assistant Mix thing. So effectively doing what an engineer would do to get your guitar to fit. And you press the button in, it just sounds shit. And you just go, why would I want my guitar to sound like that? But you speak to anybody that mixes properly, they go, no, that is what we do to your guitar sound to make it sit in the record. And you just go, what is the point of us all chasing this epic guitar tone when what goes onto the record is like a crappy version of it? But hey,
I guess
what do I know?
Depends on like the band as well. If you're John Mayer or whatever, I guess his doesn't get.
No, he doesn't use the
treatment.
Assistant Mix button on the Boss. So.
Yeah, but like for our band, because there's so much going on in a mix. There's like, I don't know. I would dread to think how many layers of like synths, hundreds of vocals, loads of guitars, loads of weird sounds, like subs and stuff. So to make all that fit, these things have got to get thinned out. Do you know what I mean? To sit in there, and I guess like it's different if you're a Metallica or an AC/DC. It is going to sound how you want. Yeah. As your amp sounds, but it's a different kind of band. Like
that's fair enough. Yeah. Look, I can see the man from Jackson looking at me, giving me the evil eye, going, "Talk about my guitars like that." He's not really. Hello. Tell me about this. So come on, this is the big news, right? So this was announced yesterday, I think, or you were certainly at Fender yesterday doing some press for it.
Yeah.
It's a wicked looking guitar.
So when I was speaking to Tim, who I've known like forever now because he used to be in bands. He played in Brim the Horizon for a little bit and stuff. Now he works at Jackson. I was speaking to him and I was like, I want to do something. You wouldn't like typically think, oh, it's a Jackson. Do you know what I mean? If you saw it, and then I found the old Charvel Surfcaster with the like lipstick sideways pickups. It looked pretty like something like Jack White had used or something. And I was like, we could maybe modernise that and like do some cool stuff with it that's not typical. Like you're not going to see Jackson do that much. I love all the normal Warriors and Dinkies and stuff, but I'd love to try and do something a bit like my own thing.
I'd love to go through it bit by bit and maybe sort of talk about the bridge and the pickups and how it sounds and everything. But I guess firstly, what was the draw of calling it a Jackson rather than a Charvel? And for those that don't know, they're kind of the same. They are basically the same company.
Jackson did do this shape as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, they did it's called a Surfcaster or something.
That's what I did. Where am I thinking? I thought the Surfcaster was a Charvel, but maybe I've got that wrong.
I know that Jackson did one as well, and then they did like a Skatecaster or something, maybe in the like early 2000s, where it were a bit more like edgy or something.
Oh well, you know what, my early onset dementia's kicking in here. I can't remember. Maybe this was a Jackson originally. I just had in my head it was a Charvel, but. So go on, take me through then, because there's quite a lot of, what have you got, lock-in tuners on the...
Yeah, so like these are like things that I've just noticed from when we're touring and stuff to make life easier. Like the lock-in tuners just mean you can change strings so easy. Truss rod access there, rather than having to like take stuff off, because we travel all over, like, and all the stuff gets like freighted and shipped. You never know like what kind of condition it's going to turn up in. And then these I had on like an old Gibson that I bought.
Yeah.
And it's just simple stuff. So like, if I'm trying to like quickly tune back in between songs live, and if you slightly overwind, then you've got to go back past it to go up and stuff. It just means that I can quickly just wind that out, and it's in tune. And I ain't got to worry about all that sort of thing. It's just them three like features are just to make life easier, basically. And like, I guess the modern.
Are they your inlays? Or like your design of inlay, or that was just what was on it? I can't remember.
I asked if they did like block inlays, and it's the shark fin, that they usually have on Jackson, but there's two.
Oh, of course it is. Like, I'm looking at it thinking it's like a cat's eye or something, but no, it's just two shark fin inlays. Oh, that's genius.
Yeah. So when like Tim sent that back, I was like, oh, obviously that works. But
it's great.
It's cool, like, because I wanted it to kind of look like like custom shop Gibson inlay sort of thing, but like Jackson's version. So it's just.
And what have you? I mean, you've got this beautiful kind of open pore finish here, and then I think it looks great.
Yeah, that idea was because I want them to age fast. So I wanted like a finish that'll wear quite fast. So everyone's like, they get relicked quicker. Do you know what I mean? Because I love a relicked looking guitar, So like the finish was more like that idea. So I've been using like the prototype on tour for about a year or something, and that's already started wearing where my arm's been sweating, or like, do you know where you scratch with your pick sometimes and stuff? And it started to look cool, and I'm like, oh, that's exactly what we wanted to happen. It, like, you not have to wait 30 years before like you get the wear and stuff.
And are these Jackson's own pickups in there, or is there a brand that you work with?
No, so they made them. They're like custom ones that they've made for me. But they say like we went backwards and forwards on this one for a bit, but they got it bang on. Like it's like not super high gain, so you still get like a really open, uncompressed sound. So you still get all like a lot of clarity and stuff, but it's got enough like drive to it to sound cool. And then the P90 is just like a classic P90. They sent me that one, and I'm like, yeah, it sounds great. So it was that easy, and yeah, so they're just like a custom set they've made just for this guitar.
Have you done it as a set neck or a bolt-on?
It's a set neck.
Set.
Yeah, because so the original ones had bolt on, do you know, the original Surfcasters, but I've had a few guitars with bolt on, and with this string, you know, when you do like that, you actually could hear it like almost like move, yeah. Wow. And so it was like a set neck. I've never had that trouble.
Do you think? I mean, it's interesting because you've got quite a lot of neck to body kind of access here. I'm guessing that probably helps with a bit of stability on that front.
Yeah.
Does it restrict? I mean, how much playing are you doing above the sort of 15th fret?
Not particularly a lot. Not on these strings anyway, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
On the thicker strings, like maybe on like the thinner ones, I go up there sometimes, but
it looks comfortable where your thumb, just when you did that, I mean, your thumb doesn't feel like it's uncomfortable.
It feels fine to me, like, yeah, easy access to that side. I guess up there it might be a bit more, but I've not noticed a problem, and it works for me. So I guess I wasn't really thinking about doing sweep picks up here or anything.
Well, that's what it's riffs for dough, sweeping for show, right? So you stick to doing the riffs. It's all good. If you've got some appropriate patches on the QC, maybe we could just hear a little bit of clean with the P90 and then and how it works with the heavier sounds on the humbucker. How many guitars do you have to take with you on tour for all the different songs in terms of tuning?
How many is there?
We got, I think it's like 16.
Oh, yeah.
we probably only use about 13, 14 during the show.
Only?
Yeah.
But there is, it would change every song pretty much.
Wow,
but it's
brilliant.
Tuning. It's not really a tone.
Do you ever forget, like, because I can't remember who I was talking to, but same thing where they've got a lot of guitars and a lot of different tunings.
Yeah.
Do you ever just have that total brain fart before you've been given a guitar and the song's about, and just going, I just can't remember what tuning this guitar's in or whatever like that, or not?
I just trust Joe. Joe in it. He has given.
I do.
Yeah. You have given me one like recent in just like a totally different tune, and I'll just start and I'll be like, yeah. So now every time he gives me one, I'm like, is this one in this tuning, or you just chose a random one again? But like, yeah.
Brilliant.
But I kind of just trust Joey has got the right one.
You have to, right? It's why texts are invaluable, right? You find a good one that you can trust. So your life is in their hands. Yeah,
it is though. It's a massive thing because you just handed the guitar and you don't even get to check if it's in tune. So if I start playing and it's wrong, it's a nightmare. Do you know what I mean? So like when you find like me and Joey have worked, how long you worked with me? 10 years, yeah. So we've been together ages, and it's like it is because of that reason. You find someone you trust and work well with.
Brilliant.
Yeah, but
no pressure.
Yeah, but this is like so a coil split, is it? And then like that, and you get like. It's like really nice, like
something
quite
acoustic
crisp
texture to it, hasn't it?
Well, especially with that out, yeah. Because I guess if you get less of that like twang, but yeah, because I do a lot of my clean is like that kind of
big ethereal.
Yeah. So it works really well for that stuff. Yeah, that's like, and then another kind of like, you know, for you more like kind of like spacey stuff, it sounds nice, but I don't know, it's pretty, there's not that many mad effects in here. You've got like your overdrive, then like I guess like a Swedish death metal. Just sounds super like
Oh man!
Yeah, crazy.
When we were setting up, you had even some sounds almost replicating like a DI'd or a broken amp kind of thing.
Yeah.
Tell us like, you know, these are presumably sounds that work within a layer or within a context or whatever.
So it's like certain songs, like "Wonderful Life" is a song we've got, and that is just like a DI sound recorded. So then to recreate, you can just do that on here. Because you can take it like a DI and send it to like the PA, but then like mess with it and you get like a weird. And it's just like a weird. When you hear the song, it makes sense.
That's what I mean. Everything works in context with the song, and I always think with those sounds, it builds a tension and anticipation because you're waiting then for the full sound to kind of kick in, aren't you? And it's a clever use of that kind of tone. It does look super cool. I'm sure I'm sure you'll have. Well, I think one of the things that I love about signature guitars with, you know, over the last 5 or 10 years is guitarists have leant back away from splashing their name all over the product.
Yeah.
And it's more just like, this isn't really necessarily sort of like buy this because you're a Lee Malia fan.
Yeah.
This is more just you buy it because you think, oh, do you know what? Lee had a cool idea for a guitar. I like that.
That's why. So it's got like the LM. 1970. So you probably would, like, a guy that don't know that it's my guitar wouldn't know. I just think it's like a serial number, I guess.
Yeah.
But I wanted it to appeal to like everyone, not just be you've not just got to be a fan of Bring Me the Horizon to want to buy this. Do you know what I mean? And I think like. I know a lot of people like yesterday were saying that it reminds them of like a Rickenbacker bass and do you know some weird stuff like that. So I just think it'll appeal to like not necessarily like your super heavy guitarist, but I don't know, a lot of people.
I think it's surprised me. I mean, it always surprises me how someone like Jim Root or whatever has really shied away from that kind of stereotypical pointy, you know, and made it sort of acceptable to have relatively classic looking guitars for sort of, you know, much more modern sort of metal vibes. I think it's great. Look, I literally know nothing about it in the sense, is it a US made range or are they making this as a
China?
So it's going to be affordable then as well.
So I think it's like 800.
Really?
Yeah.
It doesn't look like an £800 guitar. It looks way more expensive than that.
A big thing we were on about is like keeping it.
Is it an £800 guitar? It is ish.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's great.
But like we wanted to keep it affordable because like so people can actually buy it and not have to like it could because I suppose it could have like custom shop made it and it'd be £2,000, but then it's just. Seems weird to make a guitar and people not be able to afford it. So they're like the little things that we changed from the very first one I had made just to make it like sit in that price bracket. But that were like stuff like these don't glow in the dark,
right?
Which is not like a major loss, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. But just to keep it in that like affordable price.
No, I think you've done a superb job there. I mean, we're coming to the end of our time together. What does 2025 have in store? I'm still slightly freaked out by the fact that you sort of almost never see the band anymore unless you're actually doing a gig.
Yeah.
But so what have you got lined up for this year?
Well, I do see a couple of members. Like Matt lives in Sheffield still, and
right.
And Ollie's got a house over here as well, so he's always in Sheffield. So I see them like weekly.
Oh,
now.
Brilliant. Yeah.
But when he's in Brazil, obviously don't see him. There's bassists out in LA though. But this year we've got like Rock Am Ring and Rock Am Park that we're headlining, which is like cool because we've never done
First time for that.
Yeah.
Oh my god. What? Again, that just it's got to be. What happens to the 16-year-old Lee Malia when he goes out on one of these and there's those festivals are just hundreds of thousands of people standing in a field all going nuts. Is it? Do you ever get to the point where you go, yeah, this is just normal? Or
not normal. I think it's just like it's just surreal. Do you know what I mean? When you're actually playing them shows, because it's as far as you can see. Do you know? Especially Rock Am Ring, it's on like the race course, and you look out and it just never ends. You know what I mean? And it's like it's just surreal. But then I don't know. It's what we've done for so long, so it kind of makes sense in your head that like, oh yeah, we're just doing this now. But then when we have time off, you actually think about stuff, and you're like, it's pretty bonkers. Do you know what I mean? Like that we're still going 20 years later, and the band's still getting gradually bigger and stuff, which is crazy. Like it's been a gradual we never had that like one album and then drop.
Yeah.
It's been like a gradual climb. So yeah, you're like, what's next then? Because we've managed now to headline some festivals, which is like crazy. So you just wonder like, where do we go from here?
Is that have you done the Hello Wembley yet, or is that still on the bucket list?
Not the stadium.
The stadium,
We've
yeah.
done the arena, yeah.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say the arena's like that sort of half counts, doesn't it?
Yeah,
you have to do the stadium one before you can sort of get the full bucket list Hello Wembley moment.
We'd love to do it. As booking agent and management, always like, we should do Wembley like stadium. Like, no way, because it just seems like you can just imagine it being half full and being a nightmare. But I don't know, maybe one day. Cool.
I mean, if you're headlining Rock am Ring and stuff like that, I think they must be reasonably confident that you know, a few people are going to turn up and see.
We're doing Reading and Leeds as well, which we're headlining that. So, which is they're crazy ones because they're like Leeds is our local festival from where we all live, and yeah, to do stuff like that is mad. And you get like the Yorkshire chant when you're playing and stuff, and it's like it's a good time. But
does your daughter realise you're a massive rock star, or are you just daddy when you go home?
I don't think she understands it fully, but she loves it. So we've took her to like
amazing
gigs from when she were old enough. So she's been and seen us at like Leeds and Reading, and she came to Malta, she came to America to like see. But then the other day at her school, they had like they had it Rockstar Day where they all dressed as rock stars, and her like head teacher asked me to go in and play for like all the kids in like the school hall. Which was like that were more nerve-wracking than playing like Reading, because I'm like,
oh, I bet it was.
Yeah, and so I just played them like deep cut Metallica riffs to like some 6-year-olds and didn't have a clue what I was playing, and I was like, this is surreal. But they loved it though. They were all like jumping about and stuff. So like, it's pretty fun. I don't think she gets like what's actually happening, but she loves
will.
it. Yeah, she loves it. Yeah.
Oh, that is amazing. Look, man. It's a massive pleasure for you to come down. I'm so pleased we finally got to this. The guitar's amazing. Congratulations. Well done, Jackson, as well. Good luck with everything this year.
Thank you.
Everybody, Lee Malia, a round of applause. Thank you very much for coming in. That's it. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in another video soon.